Hi folks, welcome to the channel. If you're a new or returning subscriber, please remember to like our videos, provide comments to help us with continuous improvement to our content, share with friends and family, and most importantly, subscribe. Thank you.
So, back from placement, to be very honest, I mean, COVID has now become like an afterthought, to be very honest. Because sometimes subconsciously I've forgotten that COVID is still about and we actually went through a pandemic. All right, so you've come back to uni. So again, resetting, from being in industry and resetting to become a student again. So, what was your inspiration in terms of the projects that you decided to undertake as your final year design project?
Because of the focus on sustainability in my placement, I sort of wanted to base my final year project on a sustainability issue as well. So I went down the route of like microplastics and clothing care to reduce the amount of energy that's wasted through excessive washing and having to throw away clothes before they need to be because of excessive washing and their quality deteriorating. So I sort of it wasn't exactly the sustainability issues that I was working on placement, but it was still in the same
still in the same realm.
Yeah, exactly. That's I think it just gave me an inspiration of what I wanted to do, because like I said, it made me interested in wanting to pursue that field. So I thought, what better way to demonstrate my interest in it than do my final year project in it. So that's basically the reason I picked it, and I thought it was like an interesting thing to explore, because it's like a difficult problem to tackle. Like, how do you reduce clothing waste, because it's such a huge problem. So that was the main reason.
How about yourself, Lucy?
So mine was, my final year project ended up being a device to try and make skin monitoring more accessible. And so for me, I kind of chose that because as I was going, I had like a few ideas of what I wanted to work on, and some of them were sustainability focused. But because I knew I had chosen sustainable design as my optional module for second semester, I didn't want to necessarily do a sustainable final year project and then just have so much that I was focusing on, and like I don't want to get overwhelmed by it and then end up not liking it or something. And with my design, I always want to make like a positive impact. And so if that is on people or on the environment, I was kind of like, well, maybe I'll look at how I can make a positive impact and help people. And so I chose to go into kind of like the healthcare route, look into what I can do to improve the lives of others. And so one of my friends, a family member, had skin cancer, and we were kind of discussing it and how we can make it more accessible, and we're kind of floating ideas about. And so I was kind of like, it's not accessible. I don't know anyone that really checks their moles yet. We really should be. We should be doing it monthly, but no one does. And it's also quite hard to check your moles. So I was kind of like, I want to make something that helps people do that and kind of encourages people to do that more often. And then hopefully we can like reduce the risk of melanoma. So that's kind of how I went down it.
Interesting. All right, so let's talk about the first stage of your journey. So you've now decided, okay, this is what I really want to work on. So yours, Kutha, is about, okay, how do you go about minimizing the impact of waste clothing?
Yes.
And yours is, okay, how do we go about detecting skin cancer at the early stages of it? So what was the work that all that entailed before you came down to, okay, this is the desired solution, and how do we then proceed in terms of optimizing that solution for it to become a bit more realistic in real time. So do you want to share that journey with us?
Yes. So obviously had to do a lot of research at the beginning. Like there are existing products, but I wanted to make something that was a bit more accessible, a bit cheaper, because there's things like the LG Styler, which is like a big wardrobe that you can put your clothes in, and it refreshes it so you don't have to wash them as often. But I wanted to go down a similar route of, refreshing your clothes in between washes so that you can wash them less and there's less agitation, so they last longer. But I wanted it to be cheaper, more accessible. So in the beginning stages, during first semester, I was able to do a focus group, and that really helped define my design direction, because initially I was thinking of something a lot more involved, a lot more requiring a lot more manual effort. But the people I interviewed, they were very much in the mindset of they don't even like to iron their clothes, so they're not really gonna put the effort into looking after their clothes with a manual device. So I realized that it had to be something that you put your clothes in and it just does it passively, without you having to put the effort in. So that was a really big influence on what I pursued. And I did some more user testing in second semester. So that was more about like the finer details of the design, like the controls and the aesthetics. But that also helped really guide my design direction of like figuring out, what do people actually understand? Do they understand what I'm trying to show them through these controls? Do I need to clarify this? Do I need to change the location of this feature? So that was very helpful as well. So I think that helped me like figure out the like small details that you wouldn't necessarily think is a big deal, but it makes it easier to use. So I really like doing like the user research aspect of my, like, part of my final year project. But there was a lot of focus on the mechanism as well within the device. So I had to do a lot of research into how it would work, and it was, had to make a functional prototype as well. So there was a lot of work on, how do I make this mechanism? So like the idea was that it would be like a closed loop system to recover water rather than waste it, sort of promoting the sustainability throughout the device. So yeah, it was a lot of different things that you had to consider. So it was a good learning experience, but it was a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why it's important. One of the things that we do advise students before they undertake the project is for them to really think about choosing something that will keep them engaged. Because again, if it does entail a lot of work, then you get bored easily.
Yeah. It definitely kept me on my toes.
Yeah, so I think that's also a good thing that if you don't really have a lot going in terms of other modules too. So at least that makes it a bit much more relaxing. I mean, you should like, speak to your predecessors, what they had to endure and go through, the amount of work that they had to really do, particularly in the first semester.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, because in the first semester you had FYDP, so that bit that you guys were more or less doing. Then you had the mechatronics module, whereby in terms of like the coursework components, if I do remember back in the day, each student had to submit, well, the individual bits, you had to submit 2 reports. So you had to submit a report, a development report on the electronics, the embedded system design. And you had to submit another one on the technical design of the actual artifact. And we're not looking at concepts. You need to have done like your research, your PDS, your ideation, and then the development of the final design that you've more or less developed for prototyping. So 2 reports. Then after that, you selected one and you did like the artifact and submitted the group report. And on top of that, you had to do like your exam at the end of the day. Alongside that, you had to, I believe you had to do like your optional module too.
Oh, wow.
No. I think I think you did your optional module. No, it wasn't an optional module. I think it was the business and enterprise module with the research dissertation module. That used to be mandatory, now it became optional. So there was a lot going in semester 1. And I think in semester 2, you had like an optional module and just focus on the final bits. So yeah. So if there's no one put into context the amount of work that your predecessor had to do, because even with you guys, we've trimmed a bit more of the facts in terms of the mechatronic module. So the exam's been scrapped, so there won't be any exams. So it's just focusing on the technical and industrial design bits, which will now constitute the individual bit. And then the rest will just be, you know what, you select your design, make it work. So, yeah, so that's essentially the gist of it. How about yourself, Lucy? So you've now decided what you want to do. So similarly, what do you have to like really undertake? What are the events that you really had to undertake to get to that point where you think, okay, you've got in some form of solution to your brief, and you're now at that point that you're now ready to evolve that design a bit further?
So for mine, it was a topic that I didn't know much about, and so it involved a lot of research. I did research for maybe about 2 months of just straight research, trying to understand the topic. I reached out to a dermatologist who was very lovely, very happy to speak to me, and she kind of gave me pointers on, like, I had a few ideas at this point and I kind of suggested them, and she would give me pointers on what's good, what's not, and like reasons why. And so with mine, I reached a lot of I went in one direction and then I found out it wouldn't work. Then I went another, and it was a lot of, I reached very dead ends. And so the very start of it, I wanted to have it as a device that you would have at home, and you and your family would be able to check it at home. You'd be able to do monthly checks within like your bathroom or something. But when I was speaking to the dermatologist, we were talking about how we wanted it to be accessible, and we wanted people who don't necessarily have the money to buy this product. We wanted them to still be able to use it and still be able to track their moles in their skin. And we wanted people to be able to get access to it, and it wasn't dependent on your income or disposable income. And so a lot of things changed. I wanted then to do it at home, and then I went, maybe I could do it in a GP. But then I didn't want to do it at GP because then that's still got kind of the connotations to the doctors, and you might still need help from like nurses. And I wanted to have it as completely like individual self-run device. And so then I settled on having it in a health club. And so people at health clubs are typically like, they're looking to improve on their health. They are aware of kind of what things can mean, and it's also accessible. And so like anyone can really go to like a gym or a health club and turn up and use this device. Ideally in the future, I think I would want to incorporate more things into it. And so currently it is just something that maps your body, creates maps of your skin, looks for if you have any changes to your skin. But I'd like to have it as something where it could determine your weight or your like body fat percentage, and then it can kind of merge in with kind of the aspect of the gym as well, encouraging more people to do it. But for mine, it was just a lot of research, a lot of speaking with a dermatologist to kind of gauge what would be useful, and trying to find similar products out there. And so, yeah, I ended up just deciding to do this larger device than I originally intended. So it ended up being about 1.8 meters big. It's very tall device. But it will be located in the health club, in like a gym. People can come up to it it will map your body. And so one of the key stats that I found was that 70 to 80% of melanomas develop on healthy skin, and so they're not necessarily like a changed mole, it's a new like lesion that comes up. And so using this device that creates a map of your skin and a map of your body, it can detect using AI if there are any new lesions on your skin. And just with the aim of this, it's trying to provide earlier detection and also improve accessibility and not kind of limit it, and just basically target as many people as I can. So yeah, just a lot of research, a lot of speaking.
That's quite interesting, because do this in general before they get to part C. I don't know, maybe this is more or less the perception I get, that they really don't like research. Yeah, I mean, at least in the initial stages, it's kind of like, I don't think that's really relevant. So if you reflect back on, part A, part B, is there more of an appreciation in terms of the fundamentals, in terms of research and how that's central to design?
Yeah, I think if your design isn't like informed and you haven't done the research behind it, you don't have kind of, in my mind and how I go about my designs, is I want the backing and I want to know that what I've done can be backed up by facts and is needed. And so having research and having done all of that process and learning about the topic, it does make you it makes you feel like your design has achieved something a lot more, and that that you're kind of doing something with it. And so design research, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it gives like a really solid backing to your product, and I'm glad there was such a huge emphasis placed on it in FYDP. Because it's so important.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, so let's talk about stage 2 then. So, okay, you've done all the research, so you've done all that legwork, you've then kind of like established some form of rationale in terms of, okay, what has the research told you to focus on, and how would that translate from data to something a bit more visual? So now that you've done that, what were the additional events that you had to really go through to improve that idea to the point whereby you actually got something that kind of works to what you intended to achieve?
I think so. At the start, I did a lot of like sketching, had to, and then like a little bit of cardboard prototyping. Trying to get an idea of scale, what kind of size it would be, and then because of the size of my product, it's quite big. It's like table height. I had to do a lot of my development through CAD, but I think that it was good because you can iterate through a lot of different concepts quite quickly, and it gives you an idea of what it will look like much easier than making it out of cardboard. So yeah, I did a lot of CAD development, and had to do some like aesthetic development obviously as well, and then in semester 2 I had to sort of put that sort of CAD design aside and work a lot on my prototype, because the functional prototype was quite like a big part of it. At least my tutor wanted us to create a functional prototype, so did quite a lot of like research into like components and stuff that I could use to sort of replicate and represent how it would work in the mass manufactured device. The idea is that steam would be produced, and then this would penetrate the clothing, like remove wrinkles, odors, sanitize it, and then it would be dried using like sort of like a dehumidifier mechanism, and then the water would be condensed and it would go back into the water tank to be reused. So I had to like jig up a kettle with like a relay and disassemble a dehumidifier to sort of and then put it in like a big storage box with like a shirt inside, and like it was a lot of like testing and it did like a lot of electronics, trying to figure out how it would work, like the timings of how long it should be on for, like for steaming and drying purposes. So yeah, that was like quite interesting. And that obviously like helped me figure out like how the mass manufactured device would work, and then had to do a lot of research into the mechanism for that. But yeah, it was it was a lot of research again. There's always research, but yeah, I learned like a lot about how, you know, you're meant to design mass manufactured devices to work.
Yeah.
What kind of components you should be using to make it cheaper, like how, yeah, things like that, things you don't think about when you're designing a product.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Because again, you know, it does bring us back to, you know, the thinking. You look at some of these models that's out there. It kind of like gives that creation, that impression that at least once you get off the research phase, you don't do any more research. But that's not necessarily the case. It's kind of like an ongoing event.
Yeah.
That has to run alongside, you know. So that's a good thing to really point out. How about yourself, Lucy? So now that you've come up with the best solution at that point at the end of semester one, what other additional events that you had to undertake to gradually, you know, have the idea evolve to some form of functional and tangible product?
So for mine, it was very interesting because, like I said, it was 1.8 meters. It was it was a lot bigger than what they'd recommended for our final year projects. When I was discussing with my tutor, it was kind of like trying to figure out what I could feasibly test, like, and what would be worth my time and effort for me to learn a lot from, to then still develop this device. Because if I made a fully functioning scale model, that probably would have taken up my whole semester and I wouldn't have learned too much from it. And so for mine, it was quite interesting that I didn't go fully for the fully functional model. I broke it down into different parts and kind of analyzed it and focused on the manufacturer and the user interaction with it. And so I did a lot of like the functional development over CAD and used research and videos to kind of back up and like kind of say why certain things would work in it. But then I did a lot of user testing. And so I had this whole like setup day where I did like 40-minute tests with people. It went on for so long and I'm very grateful for everyone that took part. But it meant like I would show them the screen that would come up to guide them into the positions that they need to take. And so you have to stand on this platform that's like, it's quite big. It's bigger than like a Wii Fit board, but you stand in that platform and that platform guides your feet into the set positions that you need, as well as detecting where your center of mass is to then detect if you're in the right positions or not. And so I mocked up a platform for people to stand on, and then I mocked up the screen design and the audio that would be played for you. And I got people to kind of act out what they would do if they were taking part in the scan, and using like the magnification and thin lens equation, I then worked out the different places that the camera would need to be to capture the user's body. And so I tested all of those heights. And so it's just a lot of like small little jigs that like work together. And it's like I propped an iPhone in, I made a little case for it that had arrows to show the center of the lens. And then I moved that up and down to the set places that I calculated. And it was just a lot of like user testing and getting them to try out and test the device as best as I could to what it would be like if you were doing the scan. And so I learned a lot of stuff. Like my audio was really long the first time that I did it. Like people were getting quite bored halfway through because it would go on for ages. It would describe everything you need to do. And so I learned how to like cut that down, but still achieve the correct positions. And it was just a lot of like smaller scale prototypes, some like more low fidelity. But because I got the user feedback and the interactions of everyone, I kind of learned a lot about what audio I needed, what screen guidance I needed, what size I should have like fonts and images on the screen for people to easily see it and understand it. And so a lot of that was like where most of my prototyping went as well. I did like CAD models to test like I made an AR model of it that I projected over my setup, and so I had like stuff set up on the wall for like the camera and different heights of buttons and stuff. But then you could project the AR model over this setup and kind of see what it would have looked like in real life, and that got people to test the design and give me feedback on the scale. And so a lot of feedback came back. Like this second semester, I focused a lot on people's use of it, how easy it was to use, and then from that I went on to develop my device. And so for a lot of it, it was just what should be on the screen. How can I best show people their position? What lights would I need to indicate certain different like things to everyone? So like my user controls, they were not obvious to people. Pretty much everyone that tested my user controls in the first round did not understand what they were for. And so like just trying to adapt that. And so my final design was a lot of like, it was quite similar to what I produced in first semester in terms of like the overall idea of it. But in terms of the smaller things that I changed like a lot about it. Like I looked a lot more into like I did a lot of research into like the electronics that I'd need and the data security, because you have these pictures taken of you pretty much in your underwear. And so it's how do you protect those photos if you're doing a public place? And so it was a lot of research into like the smaller details of it and trying to understand what I can do to develop it. So yeah.
All right. Thank you for sharing. Very, very insightful. And again, it's one of those things whereby, people take for granted in terms of when you design a product, how do you design in such a way that it can communicate how easy is it to use? I think that's one of the things that tends to get missing along the way, because it might be obvious to you, but what about, someone else? So again, you need to consider like different people, different demographics, the culture and social implications of that. Because again, when you design it, I mean, you always need to have that mindset that it shouldn't take, the user more than 5 minutes to figure out how to operate and use the product. Otherwise, once it goes beyond that, then it starts getting frustrated to the point whereby if you're not very careful, the person might start to just smash the whole product, and that becomes another issue altogether. So that's just very, very insightful. All right. So let's talk about one thing very quickly, then we'll wrap things up. So let's talk about your other project, which was your coffee machine. How do you find that experience? And, in terms of the thinking process of that and how comparable that is to your own journey on FYDP. You want to give some insight into that?
I think it was difficult. It was a big jump from what we'd done before, just because we hadn't been able to do squash ball and we hadn't been in the workshops for so long because of COVID.
Yeah.
So it was hard, like doing the manufacturing side of things, because I was going in there again and I was like, I don't know how to use a pillar drill. But it was a good learning process, because within like a few days I was like, yep, I know how to do it. So it like pushed me to like be learning everything quickly again and like get things done as fast as possible, because it was such like tight deadlines that we had to work to. But yeah, I think because we had to do so much of our own research and development into like the design and mechanism, we could go as complex as we wanted to, and we did go really complex. I think we really pushed ourselves.
Yeah, I think some groups didn't really like the fact that it was kind of like made a bit open, but that's kind of like the whole point. Because again, if you think about the requirements for a final year design project, it's also kind of open, and it's down to how you interpret how far you really want to go based on your own skill set and the knowledge that's out there for you to assess and utilize in terms of developing some form of end solution. So that's quite interesting, because again, that's the whole point, for you to kind of like explore other opportunities in terms of pushing your own self in terms of, okay, how proficient do you think you are in terms of like your skill set and things like that? So
Yeah.
how
No,
about,
I think.
yeah, well, no, carry on.
I was just going to say, I think it definitely helped in terms of FYDP. I think I learned a lot in that project. So like, even in terms of like the manufacturing side of it and like the technical side of thing, like how things work, it like I learned a lot and it did help me with FYDP, like definitely.
How about yourself, Lucy, from your perspective?
It's very similar to Kruthi. We're in the same group, so very similar experiences with it. I think it was very good because we kind of went into halves for our groups. We had like Kruthi and another member on manufacturing, and then me and another member on like coding. And then we tried to like combine. Once we had got all the parts, we tried to like all work together on it. But because I was predominantly on the coding section, the electronics, and trying to get all of those to work alongside the mechanics, this was like the first time that we had really done something that would combine electronics with the mechanical elements of it, which was really interesting to do. And it did teach me a lot for my final year project, because we use like lead screws and stepper motors and stuff. And I ended up using that in my final year project. And because I had done a lot of research in it previously, and because I kind of knew about what to look for, it then helped me out when developing that final year thing. But yeah, it was good to like merge the two, electronics and mechanics, together.
Yeah,
because we hadn't fully done that before.
Oh, cool. So at this point, moving forward, now that you're done studying for the time being, what's the future? What's the future plan in terms of, are you going to pursue product design? And if you are, what areas are you keen on developing further or mastering?
So I did an optional module in semester 2 in UX design. So I took interest to that, and then even doing like the research aspects of.
I'm quite surprised, because I thought you'd have done the sustainability one.
No, I think so. I wanted to try something a bit different because I had done a lot of sustainability on placement. I thought that, maybe try something different, see what it's like. And I was always a bit intrigued by UX design, so I thought I'd give it a go. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I've ended up taking like quite an interest in that. So I think, at least for now, I'm going to pursue UX design. It doesn't mean that I've lost my interest in the engineering, like technical aspects of design, because I haven't. I think I've enjoyed like doing like the Arduino programming and things for my FYDP project. So I think like coding is definitely something that I'm interested in, and that ties in a lot with UX design as well. So maybe going into the technical aspects of more of like a software side maybe is something that I would like to explore. But yeah, I think for like I said, I still really enjoy the like creative aspects and the technical aspects of design. So I'm not sure what I'll end up doing in the future. For now, I'm going to try out UX design, see how that goes. But yeah, I feel like it's still like a good combination of technical and creative, which is fundamentally like what I want to do with my future. So yeah.
Cool. I mean, that I think the university does offer UX at level 7. So
yeah,
that's always an option. I don't know whether they do it on a part-time basis. I'm not sure.
No, I think I'm going to take a break from education for a little bit. Yeah.
I think 4 years, you do deserve a break. Yeah. How about yourself, Lucy? So what's the plan moving forward now that you've graduated? What is it that you've learned about yourself as a designer? What is it that you really want to specialize in moving forward?
So like I said, my optional module was sustainable design. We're both going into our optional modules, it seems. But I loved the optional module. It kind of just solidified that it was what I wanted to go into. And all of the research, all of design, like I love like sustainable design thinking, like trying to figure out how you can make products better for the environment, what you can change about them, how you can reimagine kind of the system of it and like the business model to make it sustainable. I think that's definitely where I want to go. I mean, for the next year, because I missed out on the opportunity to go to Japan for the year, I will be moving to Australia, and then we'll travel Asia for a bit, because it's been something I've wanted to do for years. So I'll take a break from design for a bit to go traveling, learn like about different cultures, different countries, and then I'll come back, and sustainable design is what I want to go into. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Cheers for sharing. So before we say goodbye, do you have like any advice that you want to give any young person who is now doing like the A level or even doing the GCSE, and they kind of like thinking about, okay, I love math, I love science, but also like, you know, art, also like design technology. What advice would you give such a person if they're kind of like in that stage of thinking about, okay, maybe product design engineering might be the way forward? So what advice would you give that person in terms of what are particularly the interpersonal skills that they need to have in exploring that particular option?
So I think the kind of main piece of advice I would give is like research the courses, like very clearly see what students have as their outputs, see what people are doing in their final years, and like maybe have a look at a few portfolios, I'm not sure, but look into them properly, because like I said, I didn't have the confidence in myself or in my like maths and physics knowledge to go into engineering. And although I've really enjoyed product design, I am kind of interested to know what would have happened if I did choose it. And so I would say, like, if you are leaning towards engineering or you do love maths and physics and you don't want to let them go, then do consider engineering, but also consider product design, because they intertwine. Like, just make sure that you research them both a lot so that you kind of know what the output of your course is, what you might do along the way, and you can really know what you're in for, if you know what I mean. I think just know that what you're passionate about, and kind of don't be scared to take the step to do it.
Well said. How about yourself, Preeti? Are there any skills and interpersonal skills that maybe students need to think about developing before stepping into the product design arena?
I think they just need to be open to learning loads of different things. I think we've been introduced to so many different aspects of design. I feel like because of this course, we could, go in, like that I'm able to go into UX design, and Lucy's able to go into sustainable design, and you could go into graphic design or even engineering. I think there's so many routes. So I think people just have to be open to, trying different things. And I think it's the same with any university course. You have to put the effort in sometimes outside of the degree to developing your skills, which is something that I definitely regret not doing. I think maybe spending a little bit of time outside of the course, maybe developing some things that I'm not as confident in, would have helped me.
Like sketching.
Yeah, definitely sketching. Yeah. So I think just be prepared to put time into developing maybe what you lack in is the main thing. I think that even doing like some work experience before you go to university helps as well, because a lot of the time the job isn't going to be exactly what you're doing in the degree, and looking at different jobs, seeing if that's actually what you want to do, maybe seeing if the degrees they require are product design or maybe it's engineering. I think that's a good way to go about it sometimes.
But kind of add into that is you should kind of be confident in your work. I think in the kind of the atmosphere of design and kind of how like the design school is and how design as a subject is, it's quite competitive. It's quite like you're compared quite a bit against others. And so if you come in confident with your work and you come in like just confident in, you know, that what you're doing and you believe in kind of what your projects are, then that will help you out a lot, I think, because there are times when you do compare yourself to others and you do look at what other people produce and you do think that you're not like good enough to be alongside them and stuff. But just kind of be confident in what you're producing, I think, is a big thing.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
You do need that confidence.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Right. Thank you very much for giving us such an insight into your journey and to where you are at this point. So hopefully, you know, any young person that gets the opportunity to watch this at least will get them thinking in terms of, okay, is product design for me or anything relating to that for me? So whether it's product design, industrial design, engineering, or anything within that realm. So hopefully at least they get some of that advice in terms of how competitive it can be. And you do need to have that, you know, that quiet self-confidence in, you know, in what you produce, but also making it a point to invest that that amount of time to get better, because nothing's really set in stone. So you do need to ensure that you're not just investing your time in the classroom, you also invest in a lot of your time outside the classroom. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a social life, but that's very important. You do need to have that, you know, chillaxing time to recuperate and get back into things. So on that note, thank you very much, ladies. I mean, I think this has been a very great interview, and I really thank you guys a lot for dedicating your time this afternoon to at least have a chat with me. And folks, until the next time, take care and see you in the next session.
Yeah.